morning, good night, wherever you may be, and welcome to our Open Up Live talk show. Today we have a very special guest, Anthony Henry of the Walnut Foundation. Before we get to Mr. Henry, I just want to give you some vital information about our group. First of all, my name is Dipchand Ramcharitar, and I am the Outreach and Development Coordinator at Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization founded in 2020 and based in London, Ontario, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help support and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 21 years, and so far 90 countries around the world joined together and doing various activities regularly. International Men's Day follows six pillars, which is for the overall well-being of boys and men. We follow in the footsteps. Before I introduce our special guest for today, I would like to go through our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life's challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. So before I introduce Anthony Henry, we have a very, very important event coming up on October 7th, 2023, from 5 to 9 p.m. at the Malton Community Center, 3540 Morningstar Drive in Mississauga. And this event is to commemorate the Residential School System 101 Part 2. So we would really appreciate if you can turn out and support this very, very important aspect that we're trying to gather awareness for. So on with the show, and welcome Anthony Henry to the show. It's a pleasure having you on board. And we were going to start off by asking you to tell us a bit about the Walnut Foundation.
Hi, Dipchand, and thanks for having me on this program. Appreciate it. The Walnut Foundation is a prostate cancer support group and men's health interest group. The organization was founded in 2007 by the late Dr. Winston Isaac and co-founder Mr. Simon Samuel. The organization basically came out of a need to assist Black men who were impacted by prostate cancer. Your audience might not know, but we are 76% more likely to be impacted by prostate cancer, to be diagnosed by that, and twice as likely to die from the disease. So it was out of that and out of our co-founders' concern about the lack of information to assist men who are going through this challenge that the organization came about.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much answers the second question, which is, in what specific ways would you say your organization or what you are trying to accomplish benefits society and in particular men? And I know you mentioned just now in the case of Black men, they have a 76% more likely chance of developing. So can you elaborate some more in terms of how it benefits society as well as men and in particular Black men?
Well, generally, if men do better in terms of health outcomes, society benefits, right? They can
exactly.
they can take care of their families for longer, and families are not do not become a burden on society. So that's one piece. The other piece is healthy communities should mean benefit for all segments of society, right? Not just some. And so, if you have a situation where some men are disproportionately impacted, then A, we owe responsibility to those men to try to figure out why. And while we're trying to figure out the why through research and things like that, we also want to look at ways to help ameliorate that situation. So if we're more likely to be diagnosed, then one of the recommendations by the healthcare system is that we start screening earlier for prostate cancer. This would also be true not just for Black men, but for men who are at high risk. So if you have a father, immediate family member, for example, who's impacted, then you're likely to be impacted by this disease. And so the recommendation is that you start screening earlier. They recommend age 45. In the case of Black men, the recommendation is that we start at age 40. So this is sort of how that can help. If men are thriving, then they can contribute to all aspects of society. They can contribute to the arts, to culture, to sciences, education, finances, politics, governance, to the future development of this society, right? So you want all citizens, and we're talking about men here. So in the case of men, we want all men, not just some men, to be able to, deliver to the best of their ability while they're still here with us.
Excellent. Well, I think you're doing a fantastic job in that regard. Uh, may I ask, what do you find when you reach out to the men out there? Do you think they're surprised at the importance of let's say, the necessary test? Are they aware of what's going on? Do they see the urgent need to get involved?
So, I'm glad you asked that question. Back in 2018, 19, the Prostate Cancer Canada did a survey where they asked people a lot of things about prostate cancer. And one of the things that struck them in particular was that the Black community didn't seem to understand or know that they were at a higher risk for
Right.
prostate cancer. So one of our jobs, basically, is
Right.
to try to ramp up this education piece, right?
I hear you.
One is to let all men know that they should be screened at a particular age. The recommendation is age 50 for the general population, and for
Right.
our community, earlier. So first we need to be aware of the higher risk, and then we
Right.
need to take action for that. Right. And so a lot of our work is around educating uh, through speaking to church groups, community groups, to organizations like yours, to lunch and learns, at your place of work, for example, just to let people know that, hey, there's this issue. And while we're trying to figure out why, let's see what we can do about it on there in a proactive way, because we should be about looking for solutions and not
Yeah.
just bemoaning the problems.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt you're taking all the, I guess, potential necessary steps to ensure that people become aware. So, what degree of success do you think you have with that?
Well, we're having some success. We're beginning to get, more men reaching out to us when they're newly diagnosed. We have a support group that we run once per month. And they come into that if they're newly diagnosed, or if they're treated and they're having some challenges, they can speak to other men, who have gone through that journey before.
Right.
Um, we are not medical doctors or researchers or anything like that.
Of
We are,
course.
yeah, we're basically patients who've traveled the road, the journey, so to speak, and we want to, reach back and help each other. So being our brother's keeper, so to speak.
That's noble. And I have to say, and again, it's great what you're doing there. It's really good that the people have the option that of becoming aware by you spreading that message out there. So, on this commendable journey, what inspired you towards this?
Mhm. So, in my case, I came to this because of my family history. My
Okay,
my father was impacted, and in fact, when he was diagnosed, it was a late diagnosis, so he
okay.
was well advanced. And what we learned was that he was not being monitored.
Oh, I see.
And by monitoring, for your audience, that means doing that annual blood test, a PSA test. And then there is what's called a digital rectal exam, where the
Right.
physician will use a glove finger, insert in the anus to feel the prostate to see if there's any growth or any abnormalities there. So that screening is done regularly. So if it's done on a regular enough basis, then hopefully the cancer will be caught early enough before it escapes the prostate gland, and it can be dealt with appropriately.
Okay, excellent. And so, what about the PSA testing? Is that something I'm not quite aware? Is that something that is covered by the government, or do the patient have to pay themselves?
Yeah, so that's a bone of contention. It is not covered by OHIP, whereas some other tests, for women like mammograms and that kind of thing are covered. Um, However, you can get the test covered and not have to pay the $40 if your family physician is aware of your higher risk, or if they're aware of your family history. So if that information doesn't get translated to your care provider, then they won't check off the box so you can get the test done for free.
Yeah.
So a part of our advocacy work is around, just letting people know that, um, um, and to encourage, proactive, um, you know, treatment, so to speak.
Right, because I noticed on blood requisition forms, there is that option that the physician can check off whether or not it recommended for it to be free or charged for.
Correct,
So, yeah,
Dipchand. But you know what, Dipchand? A lot of us don't even look at the form. We take
I
the
guess
form
not.
from our doctor and then we just walk it down to the lab. And we just do
You're
whatever,
right
right?
about that.
And then they say, oh, it's $40. And you're like, oh, all right. Now, for some people, $40 is not a big deal because we're
No,
talking
no,
about your health, but
yeah,
where things are tight, especially in this environment that we're in with issues around, housing costs, rental costs, food costs, people might just decide to forego the test and, not do it. So why have impediments in people's way?
yeah.
You know,
But I think it's critical enough of a test to warrant some sort of, I guess, investigation, if you may, into why it's not actually been done free of charge. You know,
exactly. And
that's
so that's a part of our mission, is to advocate.
exactly.
The other thing too is, as men, we need to talk to each other,
Yeah, good point. Good point.
right? And so if we're not engaged, if we're not talking to each other,
Right.
then some of these things just kind of go right over our head. It just passes us by, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
we need to be talking to each other.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. We have to reach out to each other, and if we have knowledge that we believe others may not necessarily have, but probably need, we should be reaching out to those people. So,
Dipchand, just one other thing I want to say is, this whole issue with prostate issues and prostate cancer, we just need to end the silence around this thing, right? And
I
again, it
agree.
goes back to the whole issue of why we exist, to talk
Yes.
about it, to
Right.
normalize it, and to
Yeah.
share, you know.
Yeah, I think groups like yours and ours
Mhm.
are there for that reason. We have to advocate. We have to be there for the silent, for the unaware. We have to make that effort and not look back or look anywhere else but forward and try to help these people, because there are too many people out there sadly in need of help that is available, but for some reason they're not aware of it. So we need to step up, and I think in your case and our case, we are doing that, to not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but we are doing that to a certain extent.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
We
Yeah,
just have to keep doing this kind of thing.
exactly. So switching gears a bit here, what are some of the most serious issues facing young men in your community, and how do you see those best addressed?
We see issues around, too many of our men, young men, being intertwined with the healthcare system.
Okay.
Sorry, the criminal justice system.
Criminal justice, right?
We are what, 4.3, under 5% of the population,
Right.
but yet we look at the number of inmates in the system, and we're close to 10,
So it's
9.2%.
disproportionate in a negative way.
So yeah, that's a concern, right? And it should be a concern not just for our community, but for everybody.
Right.
You can't say we're in this together and then you see these glaring disparities and do nothing about it.
Yeah, we don't live in isolation. We live in a community together. So what
Exactly.
affects one affects us all.
Exactly. Another issue I see is a lack of direction with a lot of young people, and that speaks to the need for mentoring.
Right.
Right. There's an issue with lack of opportunities, job opportunities, that type of thing.
Right.
And again, it speaks to the whole notion of mentoring and helping people to pick the right courses and the right programs, and direct, folks to the places where opportunities are, as opposed to yesterday's opportunities.
Exactly. Now, there is a recurring theme, and some people think it's controversial, but I don't know to what extent you would agree with this. But people seem to think on some level that one of the main issues that causes friction among younger people in society and society as a whole is fatherless homes, lack of fathers in homes. What do you think about that?
That can be a problem, certainly. And it's certainly good to have a father figure around the home. What I'll tell you, though, is, there are some, people who I interact with.
Right.
They're single parents, and they do a fantastic job of it. And
It's not going to be. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's definitely not going to be easy, especially in today's world, for a single person to carry a household.
So sure, and so sometimes this whole notion of single family, single person or single parent being the problem, it kind of escapes the fact that there's some people doing a wonderful job, and in fact better than in some two-parent homes.
Right.
So that's my take on that.
Okay, very good. Now, moving on, what kind of relationship did you have growing up with your father, and how do you think that helped your transition into adulthood?
So, in my case, I think my dad was he was present and available to talk to.
Right.
Right? He was there as a role model to demonstrate responsibility. He was always working. And these examples, they do translate.
Right.
Even the relationship between my dad and my mom, some of these things are learned, and what you see is, it provides something for you to emulate on there. But if there's no reference point, then it's harder, because you have to make it up for yourself. And so I think I was fortunate in that I had both parents available, and not only available but engaged, trying to help me to
Right.
navigate the process as I move from where I lived before, Jamaica, for the first 15 years of my life,
Right.
to when I came to Canada and trying to navigate this system. They were always there for me.
Excellent. Is there anything in particular that your dad did that you really looked up to him and something you felt proud or inspired by what he did?
Mhm. He was not one to jump to conclusions. You know,
Right.
he was very calm, measured in his approach, and that served him well. And it was a great example for me. Sometimes you go out there and you see people shooting off their mouth, and you know, if you step back a bit and just listen, it's like, what is he or she really saying? They're not really saying anything constructive. So
Right.
he was, the kind of person who was, you know, very measured in his approach, and so I think that certainly helped to form the person who I am today.
Excellent. Because we as but I'm a parent too, and obviously I had a dad, and when I was growing up, we he commanded a great deal of respect, and I learned a great deal from him. Now, obviously, as any other two persons, we didn't necessarily agree on everything, and then I would take something that I didn't agree on, and
Yeah,
when I had my kids,
yeah,
I changed some of his teachings, let's say, and
yeah,
I'm sure my kids would not like everything I pass on to them, and the story
yeah.
goes on and on. It
Yeah,
just
for sure.
it
I
just
mean, speaking of that, we had our disagreements
yeah,
on, politics, history,
yeah,
perspective. They grew up in a different time
yes,
and they
yes,
saw the
exactly.
world a particular way.
And that's one of the reasons why I don't hold anything against my parents, especially my dad,
Yeah,
is because it's a different time.
yeah,
And so you have to put things in historical perspective sometimes. And I came to that conclusion. I said, I'm not holding this against my dad as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not condoning some of the things. I'm just saying um, it was his way of doing things. That's what he thought was the best way to do it.
mhm.
And so, I just went with that. So um, we're pretty much come, unfortunately, towards the end of this wonderful program.
Yes,
Um, I do have one other question, but before I get to that, I just want to add some additional information about our group.
mhm.
There are no limitations to gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walk of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be part of our organization and help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We would love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Our phone number is 226 289 8784. Our email address is info at voiceofmen360.org. Our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. You can also find us on pretty much all social media. Facebook, join our group so you can see our daily activities. Please invite your friends as well. Other social media platforms we engage with are Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. So, Anthony, we're pretty much there. And I have to say, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. And finally, do you have any contact information you'd like to share with the folks out here?
Sure. For those who are interested, you can go to www.thewalnutfoundation.com to learn more about our work, or attend meetings, or you can email us info@thewalnutfoundation.com. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Anthony Henry. It's been a pleasure speaking to you for the past 25 to 30 minutes. And
Yes.
I hope the folks out there really appreciate, or can appreciate rather, all the wonderful information that was shared on this program. Thanks again, Anthony, and to all the folks out there. Good evening, good night, and good day. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
You as well. Bye.